So in this tape, we're going to explore a very exciting part of this program. It's where we'll learn how to apply what we've been learning as a tool for achieving whatever it is you want in life by focusing on goals. Anything you want in life is possible. Lester used to say, anything, even the most impossible, becomes fully possible when you're released on it. And you know when you're released on it when you don't give a hoot. And I see a lot of you smiling because that's a funny way to express it. But not giving a hoot means when it's okay either way. When we feel like we must have something, we're opposing having it in our life. Or when we feel like we really don't want something to happen, it seems to happen anyway. But when you get to a place inside where it's okay either way, whether or not, that you can achieve that particular thing, then you have a tremendous power to create what you want. And the purpose of the work we're about to do together is to help you discover what Lester used to call, jokingly, the hootless state inside, where it's okay whether or not you can achieve or do that particular thing. So, turn in your book to the page that says wording a goal statement. So the goals that we'll be working on are the goals that have to do with what it is that you said you wanted from this class. If you remember earlier in the class and earlier in this tape series, we filled out a page that says, what do I want to get from this training, both personally and professionally? So we'll be taking one of those items, and we'll start with just one because it's very important to be focused. And then we'll be using these guidelines, the wording a goal statement, to help us word the goal in a way where it's most likely to be manifested in our experience. We'll talk about how to work on goals after we've gotten ourselves very clear on how to word the goal. I'll briefly run through these points. You have them in your workbook, but just to make sure they're clear, I'll go through all the different points about what's important as far as wording a goal. The first point is phrase it in the now. Most of us fall into the trap of thinking that we're going to create it in the future. And the future never seems to come. How many times have you said to yourself, I'll do that tomorrow, and you didn't do it? That's a very, very common report, because whenever you're holding it in mind that I'm going to do this later, or tomorrow, or next week, or next year, very often the mind and you project it into the future, and that just never seems to happen. So a very important point is to phrase the goal in the now. And then the second is phrase it in the positive. And what we mean by that is don't put in the goal that which you're trying to get rid of. For instance, say you'd like to stop smoking. The goal isn't, I allow myself to stop smoking. And I'll explain why. The mind that does not translate the word not, or don't, or stop, or any of those negative words, because the mind thinks in pictures. Right now, if you try not to think of a white elephant, what do you think of? A white elephant, right. Because the mind, if you say, don't fall to yourself, very often you'll trip. If you say, don't forget this, how many times have you said to yourself, don't forget this? And what happens? You forget it. The mind thinks in pictures and it doesn't translate those negative words. So if you're trying to hold in mind, stop smoking, the mind doesn't hear the word stop, so you end up holding in mind is smoking. You need to put something in the goal that the mind can visualize. For example, I allow myself, with that specific goal, I allow myself to be a non-smoker. You can picture a non-smoker. That's something you can see, other people who aren't smoking. So it makes a big difference to put that wording in that manner. Now the goal should feel real or realistic. In other words, if you are currently making $1,000 a week, I'm assuming that those of you listening to this tape already have tremendous abundance. But just in case, I'll use that as an example. Supposing you're making $1,000 a week, but what you'd really like to make is $10,000 a week. Now from 1,000 to 10,000 might be too big a jump for you to accept in just one specific goal. So you might want to start with $2,500 a week. That's a stretch from where you are, but it seems real or realistic. The more you make it real or realistic, something that the mind can accept as at least a possibility, the more likely you are to be able to release any obstacle that you have within you to achieve the goal. And then include yourself in the goal statement. In other words, if you want to clean your house, you might want to say, I allow myself to clean my house, as opposed to the house is clean. Sometimes that can lead to magical thinking, which means thinking that's not really real for what's going on in the moment. If you say, the house is clean, first of all, you might not believe it. And secondarily, you might start waiting for a miracle to happen so that the house gets cleaned by itself. If you've had tremendous resistance to cleaning your house, and then you do this goal, I allow myself to clean the house, or I allow myself to easily clean the house, and you release the resistance that may be stopping you from cleaning the house, you'll find yourself cleaning the house. Be precise and concise, and use as few words as possible, while at the same time making sure you get excited when you hear the goal. In other words, you don't want to put everything but the kitchen sink in one goal. This actually is a kind of an important point. I'll give you a very concrete example. Years ago, there was a man in a class who set up a goal. I allow myself to have an abundant income so that I can have a new car, the house in the country, the maids to take care of the second house, and the perfect woman to have a relationship with to share all of this. Now, I think you can see there's several goals in that one goal, and they're all pulling in different directions. So the instructor helped them simplify it by, one, helping them break it down into individually specific goals, and then she came up with an umbrella goal that was helpful for the whole situation, which was, I allow myself to have the good things in life and enjoy them. See how that includes everything there? It doesn't create you to pull into all sorts of conflicting directions. Make sure you word it to facilitate letting go. And what I mean by that is, one area where you could get yourself into trouble is in the area of relationship. If you make a goal to, I allow Mary to love me, that could get you into trouble. First of all, you'll be running around doing all these things to try to get her to love you. And what if she's not even the right person for you? Or, I allow Joe to love me, or whoever it is that you have a goal about. And that could tend to really get you stuck. Whereas if you phrased it, I allow myself to have a loving relationship, then it's more open and inclusive. It might be with the person you're having a relationship now, or it might not. And if you're including someone else in the goal, then you're going to get into a tug of war with that person. Whereas you hold in mind what you want, it might be with that person, it might be with someone else, but you're not going to automatically put yourself into a tug of war. And you want to eliminate the word want from your goals. We'll talk more about how wanting bars having later in the tape series. But in general, would you rather want to have a lot of money, or would you rather just have it? Would you rather want the perfect relationship, or would you rather have the perfect relationship? Would you rather want good health, or would you rather have good health? Want equates to the feeling of lack, so you don't want to put the feeling of lack in the goal. And also, when you phrase a goal, you want to phrase it so you're focusing on the end result, not your means of achieving it. For instance, if you'd like to have, to go back to an earlier example, a net income of $2,500 a month or a week, you don't want to put how you're going to get it. In other words, I've heard people say goals like this: I allow myself to make $2,500 a month by working 18 hours a day, 6 days a week, and a whole list of actions that they thought they needed to take in order to get the goal. And what you'll discover is that very often the actions you think you need to take in order to get the goal have absolutely nothing to do with the goal. It's only a limitation or an artificial obstacle that you're putting in your way that you don't need to. Also, you'll notice as we work on goals that we'll specifically release on the action steps that you can take in order to get the goal, and that will also help you achieve the goal. So just put in what you want. So if you want $2,500 a month net income, say, I allow myself to have a net income of $2,500 a month or more. That also allows for the unexpected. What if someone gifts you a large amount of money? What if you win the lottery? There's so many things that could happen to allow that goal to come into your awareness that you might not know of when you first start working on it, that you don't want to limit yourself by putting the means to the end in the goal. So the last point we've already covered, in that it's important to just focus on one goal per goal statement. If you put too much conflicting energy going in different directions in one goal, you'll find it will confuse you and it'll be difficult to release to completion. Also, when you word a goal statement, it's important to word it in either courageousness or acceptance or peace. And what I mean by that is, I allow myself to, or I can, I have is a good way to start a goal in acceptance. And I am is a good way to start a goal in peace. We've talked a lot about the I allow myself to, which is a very good way of wording a goal. And the reason to start in courageousness very often is if you're not in courageousness about a particular topic, getting into courageousness is already a great step forward, and you could always reword the goal later to raise the energy even higher to acceptance or peace. If you want to have $1 million in the bank, if you say, I allow myself to have $1 million in the bank, it might be easier to accept that than to say, I have $1 million in the bank. Even though that's a higher way of wording the goal, it's more accepting. The mind might go, what are you, crazy? I don't have $1 million in the bank. I've got 50,000. I've got 100,000. What are you talking about? And it might be hard to get past that. Whereas if you say, I allow myself to have $1 million in the bank, the mind can start using its creativity to start generating possibilities of how that can happen. What I'd also like you to do is look at the page right after the page called Wording a Goal Statement. And on that page is some sample guidelines of how you can possibly word a goal. So using the information that I just gave you and the information on that page, take a moment, pause the tape, and take one specific thing from your list of what I'd like to get from this course and word it using these guidelines as a goal statement. And once you do, restart the tape and we'll take it from there. So I assume if you're playing the tape right now, you've already worded a goal. So here's some other general things to become aware of as you're working on a goal. First of all, the reason this goal work is so powerful is, I'm sure you've heard, as you think, so is your world. This is a way of using the method to practically put that into application. And this is very different than positive thinking. What we'll be doing is using the goal to pull up out of your subconscious mind all the thoughts and feelings and beliefs that are contrary to you achieving what it is you want in life. So you don't affirm, I allow myself to have $1 million, I allow myself to have $1 million, I allow myself to have $1 million. What you do is you say the goal quietly to yourself, and then you allow whatever thought or feeling there is to the contrary to come up into your awareness. And if you're working with the goal chart, which we'll talk about in a minute, you write it down, and then you release the feeling associated with, I don't have it. The more you release it, whatever feeling you have about that particular goal, you're shifting your awareness on that goal. And you'll find as you do that, just like with releasing in general, you have a tendency to move towards courageousness, acceptance, and peace. Specifically, as you work on goals, the more you work on them, your attitude towards that specific goal will become more and more courageous, more and more accepting, and more peaceful. And as I mentioned earlier, that hootless state I talked about, where it's okay whether you have the goal or not, is a very powerful place to create from. In fact, the most powerful place to create from. So on the next side of the tape, we'll be working on goal charts. But as a way to practically put this into action right away, we'll be spending a few minutes now doing a closed-eye process where we'll combine visualization with releasing. A lot of you have already probably done visualization, so we'll show you how to use something you're already doing in combination with what you're learning now to start to create what you want in life. Allow yourself to sit back and focus inside. And if you have something on your lap, you might want to put it down for a moment. And again, You can do this with eyes open or eyes closed, but for visualization, very often it's easier if you do it with eyes closed. Now allow yourself to think of your goal, the goal that you just worded. And allow yourself to paint a picture inside of what it will be like when you have this goal. And some people have an easy time with visualization, and some people sometimes struggle a little bit with it because they think that visualization needs to be visual. Well, yes, if you're a visual person, you'll get actual pictures inside. But if you're more feeling-oriented, it might just feel like a feeling. You might feel what it feels like to have $1 million in the bank. And if you're an auditory person, you might hear a whole narration about what it's going to be like when you have the $1 million in the bank. So use whatever senses are comfortable to you. Don't worry whether or not they seem visual. So just allow yourself to focus inside and really paint a vivid picture of what it's going to be like to have your goal. And really get into it. If you can, see what it will look like, what it will feel like, what you'll be hearing, and what you'll be perceiving on every level. Now check to see if there's any feeling inside of you that says, no, I can't have this, or this isn't real, or this is just a fantasy, or whatever feeling is coming up to the contrary of allowing this picture to come into reality. And could you just allow yourself to feel that feeling? Welcome it. And then could you let it go? Would you? When? Now picture having your goal again, using whichever sense you're most comfortable with. What is it going to be like when you have this goal? Now again check to see if there's anything inside of you that's saying, no, I can't have it, I shouldn't have it, I don't have it. And bring that into your awareness, bring that into the foreground. And then could you let it go? Would you? When? Again, go back to your visualization. And notice how each time you come back after you've done some releasing, it feels a little easier inside, maybe a little more attainable. A little more like, yes, I can have this, or I can do this. And just allow yourself to picture having or doing whatever it is that's in your goal. Allow yourself to experience it as though it's happening right now. Paint a vivid picture as you can. And check to see if there's any resistance inside, even on a subtle level, to having that be here right now. Any holding back or holding on in relationship to having that in your experience. And if there is, could you just welcome that? Stop fighting that in your consciousness for a moment. Just let it be. And then could you let it go? Would you? When? Now let's go back to the visualization one more time together. Allow yourself to see yourself and feel yourself and hear yourself having exactly what you want. And could you allow yourself to fully welcome that image into your awareness? Embrace it. Own it. Really allow it to be. And just know that it's okay to have it. It's okay to allow that into your awareness. You do deserve it. And in a moment, I'm going to encourage you to bring yourself back to everyday awareness. But allow yourself to rest in that sense of, I can have it. I am doing this thing that I want. Allow yourself to bring that with you as you gradually bring yourself back to everyday awareness.